So what we're gonna look at is, again, calculations, because it's been so long since we did calculations. This is giving us the CPI, the total market basket already done for us. We're not having to compute, okay? So let's just look at the first one. If I were to do for just year one, if I were to do this, what would be my, could I even do it? Year two minus year one over, so this automatically gives me what? 0, there's no rate of inflation this year. Okay, if I were to look at the next one, okay, I take year two, which is what? 1,200 minus what? 1,000 over what? Times 100. What does that give us?
20%.
Why won't this go on? Oh, it's because I'm not pressing the right thing. Did y'all do it, or was Colton the only one to do it? Yep. So do you get 20%? Right, and then we look at the next one. It's 1,400 minus 1,200 over 1,200. Wait, isn't that the same amount from there to there?
Why is it 1,200? Wouldn't it be still calculated from?
Oh yeah, sorry, that's GDP deflator. This is just 1,000. You're correct.
So the top 1,002?
So now looking here, I forget with CPI we use the base year. Like, so now this would be about 40%, right?
Wait, on the other side of it.
No, it's 16.6, because you're putting it over,
Oh yeah, sorry. I need to just do the math.
yeah.
Let's do the math. I just assumed. So over here, 1,400 minus 1,000.
No, wait, minus 1,200 first. It says minus,
No,
No, because I have to do from the first year.
oh,
It's 40%.
so it's not adjusting every year like.
Yeah, it's not adjusting like GDP.
Then yeah, it probably is around.
It's
then it-
40%.
Then it is 40%.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yes.
On the other side, we didn't do that way. We didn't use the base year.
We didn't use the base year?
We did not. Take a CPI inflation rate.
Yep.
Not the same.
No, it didn't. Yeah, we changed every year.
We
So-
changed every year?
Yeah, it's only on the year divided by base.
It's-
Oh yeah, divide by base, it's only the first one. When we do the year to year, we have to stay like that,
Yeah,
right?
so, yeah.
So this should be 20% or
16.6.
six, whatever it is.
Um,
Because it's on this first one that we have to remain the same, not on the second one.
Right.
Gosh, no, on this first one right here, you always have to use the base. So this would be 8 over 8. And then this one, when you total that, this is 14 over 8. And then this is 20 over 8. Okay? But when we come to the second one, we use the first year minus the second year over the base year. Okay? So it all remains the same. Because we want to compare to the first year to see what's going on. Does that make sense? Okay. So this would be 1,400 minus what? What did we say it was?
1,200.
Over,
1,200.
which gives us what?
16.6.
Right. Now let's look at this next one. What we're gonna do here is we're gonna do the market basket. To do the market basket, you have to multiply out and get the total over here. So this first one, what is it?
30,
30. This next one, it's,
14,
and then it's
36.
36. That gives me a total of 50, 80, right? Okay, so now we're just trying to get the market basket. To get the market basket, you take the quantity times the price. Okay, so this first one,
25,
the second one,
18,
this third one,
57,
7, that's 100, right?
132.
What?
25
Yeah,
plus 18.
that's right. Is that correct?
18 plus 57.
50.
No, it is 100, dead on.
Plus 18, I'm
Where
going
did
to
you
do
get
my
that?
math. Okay, it's 100.
Running the same thing, jumping
Can't make mistakes. Okay, so this first one, we need to get the CPI inflation rate. So I'm gonna take the second year minus the first year over the first year. So what's the, if I just did this for the first year, it's 80 over 80 over 80 times
Which gives you 1.
Yeah, or 0,
Yeah,
okay?
or-
Cause there's no rate of change, right?
yeah.
Okay, so now I look at the next one. I take 100 minus 80, right, over 80 times 100, that gives you, I'm doing my math,
2 over 8, which is 25%.
yep, 25%. Okay. We already had the definitions for this, but I already see I, what does this tell me that it's keeping in? Inflation. Okay, what has happened here? If that has inflation, what has been calculated out of this?
Inflation.
It calculates out inflation. Okay, this, we did a couple of equations on the thing. I know nominal interest rate will always be represented by an I, and pi represents inflation. So if I just said our nominal interest rate was 5%, and inflation was 3%, what would that tell me about the real interest rate?
2%.
It was 2%. Okay, y'all get this? Okay, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna do our review. I'm gonna pass those out. I don't know if I have them hole punched. Okay, yours is right in this group.
Yeah.
I have an extra one.
It's hers. Alright. Hey.
You tried to hand it to me? Your arm extended past my body.
Okay, so let's do this review together, cause this is going back to a long, long time ago. Okay, our first thing on here is the circular flow. Y'all have a nice drawing of that. Remember when you had to draw it? Okay, what are the 3 sectors?
Government, household, and industry.
Gosh, it's really blurry. I wanna clear up. Is that blurry, y'all?
Yes.
Is that better now?
Yes.
Okay, so how does the government interact with the resource market and the product market? So I think about in the resource market, what does it demand from the households? The government demands what?
Factors of
The factors of production. If I were to do FOP, y'all know what I mean, right? Factors of production from households. And gives money, right? Basically we know as national income, which are the payments for the sell. So then the government, what does it do for business? What does the government provide
In the product,
in the
market?
resource market? They
Um,
provide,
Provides public goods and services.
yeah, they
And takes in taxes.
public goods and services. In the product market, what is the okay, so demands, provide, y'all know provide means supplies, right? So I just gotta get to my demanders and suppliers. Okay, in the product market, the government does what? What do they do for households?
They give public goods and services
They
and
s-
take taxes.
They supply public goods and services for households and tax them. And lastly, what does the government do for business? If they supply here, the government's gonna do what? Demand what from business? Goods and services, and what do they pay them? Not national income,
Business.
GDP, right? One of the GDP payments, which is of it, GDP, we see GDP is C plus I plus G plus XN, which GDP? They're G,
Government spending.
okay? There is a leakage of, circular flow and it's savings. Any paper financial transaction, because is there any way for a good or service to be given in exchange for that? Is there any way for a good or service to be given when you save? No, it doesn't go into it, so savings, I already have the answer there, just FYI, savings is something that's a leakage of circular flow. Okay, what we're gonna look at now is the types of unemployment. Do y'all remember the types of unemployment?
Structural.
Like structural. Wait, I'm gonna write all. Structural is technology. And then I had someone who said frictional.
Seasonal.
Okay, well, I'm gonna put friction, it did it again. Okay, frictional is when you're in between jobs. And then we have cyclical, which refers to what?
Your business cycle.
Business cycle. And then we're missing one.
Seasonal.
Seasonal, which is weather, holiday, temp work.
What was an example of cyclical?
All of a sudden, people lose their jobs because of the Great Depression,
Okay.
okay? Cyclical can also mean the business cycle, which we saw on the people in the Cold War, right? That all of a sudden we're no longer making MX missiles.
Okay.
Who is in the labor force?
People working
People who work 2+ hours a week. Okay, this next one, who's not in the labor force, I'm gonna put it out here. Okay, who is not in the labor force?
individual is not seeking work.
Okay, that's, I'm talking about who the government will not count. So all the,
Military.
okay, military. Who else?
Illegal activity.
That's the things about how can the unemployment not be accurate in the next one?
No.
Who else is not counted towards this?
Retired.
Retired people,
Under 18, right?
under 16 years, students,
Institutionalized.
people who are institutionalized, mentally ill, or in the hospital. I was trying to spell hospital and
They don't count any foreign service, do they?
No, they don't count foreign service, but that would be military.
Well, I mean, like outside of the country.
Outside of the country, no, so like if you, let's just say you're part of Peace Corps, you don't count.
Well, I'm talking like corporations, like if you have people in other countries.
in other
working
countries,
for-
no, they would not count towards this one.
Yeah.
Okay, and so that's oftentimes that people who go overseas, they're not being taxed on their dollars because it's not within here. So like people who went to like the Persian Gulf to be a part of one of the oil rigs there, they weren't getting paid through GDP here, so it didn't count into the American GDP, but it
So
did.
they would get paid in like, say, the Emirates?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, we're missing, a couple of people in prison.
Yeah.
And then the discouraged worker. A discouraged worker has what? Given up.
That's Uncle whatever.
Uncle Flemjack.
Uncle Flynn.
Hey, hey Sarah. We're working on our review. And I don't know where I put them. I swear I just had them. And then we finished up our notes and I'm recording everything, but I don't know what I did for reviews. I passed them out to y'all, right? Y'all are writing on something.
Yeah.
Here they are. So, who is unemployed? To be considered unemployed, you have to be what?
Seeking a job.
Seeking and looking for a job. Do you know where Eric is, Sarah?
I didn't see him, no. But if he was in a different area.
Okay. Right. The next one, it says the ideal US unemployment rate. What is it? 94 to 95% that we wanna see people working. What is the unemployment rate not measured? The discouraged worker. Because remember, they're taking everybody else who's actually looking for a job divided by the population. And how can the unemployment rate, how can the unemployment not be accurate? What are we not measuring? And this is what I told Joshua earlier.
Illegal act.
We don't measure illegal activities such as those babysitters. That's an illegal activity. Because are they reporting what they got in money, GDP, to the government? No, okay? So, do any of y'all like mow lawns and get paid money? Okay, do y'all, other illegal activity, all of that, but again, we talked about it being under $500 and you don't have to report it, right? But that's still measuring. You know where Eric is?
No.
We're just trying to figure out where he is. Okay. What is the ideal US unemployment rate? So if I said the employment rate is this, what should our ideal unemployment rate be? 5 to 6%. Okay, the next one, define gross domestic product. It is all final goods and services produced where? In a nation's boundaries. Within what? Geez. Yes.
Is that 1 year? Is that like one calendar year, or is it our GDP from like August to August could be considered?
It's from January to January.
Okay.
Because that's when, like, have you ever heard, like, all these businesses, they do end of year sales? Well, because, when you get into micro, you can no longer count that for the next revenue year. Okay, and so that's why they try to clearance them to get those sales out, because that, it all calculates. Okay, And so the government looks at, like, if you were like in 2019 and still selling a 2018 car, there's a different way in microeconomics to calculate that in for the true GDP. But, and that's only looking at businesses at a very narrow scope.
Even if it's like still new technically?
They have to inventory that. Okay. Hey, define gross national product, it is all what?
Final goods and services.
Final goods and services produced by a country's firms, y'all know firms means businesses, right? Anywhere.
So do country, or do businesses get to say where they're technically established, I'm assuming then?
What
Like
do you
what,
mean?
Toyota, like we were talking about, they're a Japanese company, but what,
They count towards our GDP because they're now located in San Antonio. So anything they produce here is gonna count towards GDP for the
but
United
they
States.
also count towards Japan's GNP.
That counts to their GNP, correct?
So what I'm saying is, but the Toyota stuff that's sold in Japan isn't counted towards our GNP.
That's correct,
What
because that's
determines where
that's
the
their
company is?
company, cause they're based in that area.
No, I'm
So
saying,
like,
do businesses say where they're based?
yes,
or
they
do
are. So
countries
like
say?
Ford, so Ford is based in America. So Ford makes Ford Fiestas in Mexico. So making a Ford Fiesta in Mexico, does that count towards GDP?
No.
But does it count towards GNP? Yes. When McDonald's makes a burger in France, does that count towards GDP?
No.
No, but does it count towards GNP?
Are they
It
American?
is an American business. Okay, Harley Davidson just went to Europe because of the tariffs. So it only counted towards GDP, but though Harley's made in Europe now are gonna count towards GNP. Okay, cause they don't wanna double dip, okay?
A cheeseburger in France, you rely on cheese.
Alright, let's go to the next slide. Okay, what are the two approaches to calculating GDP? So like basically what is counted? There's two approaches. One is the expenditure approach. So GDP is equal to what? Everybody who's spending, There are letters that are spending. C, which is who? Consumers. I, which is who? Businesses. G, which is who?
Governments.
Government plus
X and.
XN, which is?
Exports minus imports.
Right. The next one is the income approach. Okay, for the income approach, this is GDP, and I just calculate the cell payment. So what is one cell payment for labor?
Oh, the wages.
So it's wages
Wages plus.
rent
Rent
plus
plus.
interest
Interest
plus
plus profit.
So this is just
Or rent.
the factors of production payments. Is your arm sore? Are you left-handed? Did they ask you which hand do you write with?
Yes, which one I prefer to get control.
Okay. Okay, what is not calculated into GDP?
Used goods.
Okay, used goods.
Legal
Illegal
goods.
or leisurely.
Okay, used goods, illegal activities. Okay, leisure. Leisure, like chores. I know I usually don't do my, my laundry, but I use my leisure time to do my laundry, right? So that counts, but if I send my husband's dry cleaning to the dry cleaners, does that count towards GDP? Yes. If I decide to hire a maid so she could do all of our laundry, does that count towards GDP? The week I decide to do our laundry on my own time, that is a leisure chore, okay? Okay, what other items?
Foreign
Okay,
items.
we're not calculating foreign items.
Pay
Paper transactions, so like,
loans when friends get married.
yeah, like loans, or you're buying stock, okay?
Transfers.
Transfer payments, do y'all know what transfer payments are? It's when the government gives people money, so give me some transfer payments. Child support, what other things do the government do to transfer money? Food stamps, subsidies, social security, okay? Y'all are forgetting a couple of other things, intermediate goods. And items not produced in the year. Sorry, this just has to go down this way. Sorry. Okay, nominal GDP. What is nominal GDP? It calculates goods and services.
Income, or not, provision.
In what prices? In current prices. What does this have in it? This is with inflation. Real GDP, it, in constant prices, we take out the inflation. Okay, which is a better indicator? Do we want the one with inflation or without? Which one would indicate how we're doing? Without, so real GDP. And again, cause it's comparing at a constant price, compares at a constant price. Right, how do we calculate nominal? All we do is take the quantity times the price. And then we total for the year. So for the real GDP, we take the quantity of the current year, correct? Times the price of what? The base year. And that gives us the total for the year. Okay, how to calculate percentage change in real GDP? Take the new year minus what? Base year over the base year times what? Do y'all remember what aggregate supply means? Total supply. Produced by a nation, right? Okay, and it kinda looks like this, right? Okay, and I'm gonna give you that PowerPoint, cause I know I went over it last time. I just didn't give you the PowerPoint where I was showing you. Again, if we're over here, our price, this is price level in real GDP. When I'm over here, what's happening with prices? They're staying what? Pretty low, constant, right? But what phase of the business cycle are we in? Prices are not high, prices are low, what are we in? We're in a recession here. Prices are rising up here. What does that tell me we're in? Expansion. I'm gonna give you the PowerPoint on this because I covered it really quickly. What are the factors that move the aggregate supply? Again, it's anything with gets tips. You all remember that? The government expectations, technology, number of sellers, taxes, inputs, productivity, and subsidies. Do y'all remember that? That was like unit 2. Aggregate demand is the total demand for a good / service. This really tells us this is equal to GDP. Again, what are the factors that move demand? Timer, or the other acronym, timer. It's really quiet without Eric. Or y'all are just done, it's a Tuesday that feels like a Monday.
I literally thought that was Monday all day.
Really?
Yeah, we're talking about New Day stuff, I thought it was Monday.
I thought it was Thursday. I had a lunch at my place.
Are y'all ready for your Monday off?
What Monday? I still have
Friday,
practice.
how about so?
I still have
We don't have to football. We still do practice on this.
Are you practicing on Monday too?
And we have a game on Friday.
Yeah, I'll be there too.
It's not
Okay.
really day left.
Inflation. Define inflation, it is the general increase in price level. Huh? Yeah. Okay, it says the government likes inflation around 3% we're in a expansion. Below 3%, we are in a what? Contraction or recession. Deflation. It's a decline in the price levels. Stagflation. High unemployment. And high inflation. This is called an abnormal contraction, and we'll talk more about it later. When I get to supply side economics, because you really can't have both phases of the business cycle going on. And we'll talk about, this is why Jimmy Carter had a lot of difficulties when he was president. Okay. Can I flip down? Okay. Who is hurt by inflation? Creditors, savers, senior citizens, who is helped, borrowers, and people with COLAs. And again, the people who could expect inflation, but do you really think that people are that in tune to be able to be like, oh, inflation's gonna happen in the future? They have their inflation little hat on. No.
Well, I mean, inflation
Some
always
people.
happens.
It always happens. Okay, it says define demand pull inflation and graph it out. So here is price level, real GDP. I know my aggregate supply curve is gonna look like that because we know when those businesses hit a wall, they cannot produce any more output. So I wanna show demand pull inflation. I'm gonna graph everything at an equilibrium first. When people have, this is too much dollars chasing too few goods. When I have too much dollars chasing too few goods, which way does my aggregate demand curve go? Up into the,
Right.
and this is called demand pull inflation. People are causing the prices to go up. We talked about this like around Christmas time, when there's like a hot ticket item that everybody wants, that all of a sudden people have this money and the price is going up, right?
Like the iPhone 11.
Is it really going up in price?
I mean, I'm assuming whenever it sells out. like,
Yeah, okay, but people could do this on eBay, right? They take an item and then it goes and it goes up in price. Okay, cost push inflation. Okay, it says define, okay, here it's when the cost of the factors of production increase, causing supply to what? So I'm gonna graph it out way out here, cause I don't have enough space. Price level, real GDP. And Maria, do you have a lot of space on your paper?
I have lots of space.
You write nice.
I
and
drew a
tiny.
monkey.
You drew a monkey too. She writes very minuscule.
Yeah, I just had bigger papers next grade.
Okay, there's the factors of production are increasing in price, causing the supply to decrease, so my supply curve goes which way? So what has happened to price? Price has gone up. Basically, both of these cause prices to go up. Cause even here, right, this is the original, this is the secondary, okay? Okay, effects of inflation. What happens to your purchasing power?
Decrease.
Declines, yeah, decreases. Sorry, it froze. What happens to your standard of living? Are you gonna be able to buy all your brand name goods? You have to substitute. Hey, people, their wages, what? What's happening to people's wages? They're working for less, so people, wages are still low. So they're actually working for less. So what do people often demand? When prices go up, they demand for what? Their wages to go up. Okay. We're seeing that. What was the last thing? I don't have it written down. Which one am I missing? I don't know, I'll think of it in a second. The inflation rate. What does this measure? What does this measure?
The percent of price through,
The percent of what?
the price.
Price? The percent of the price what?
Rising
Rising
per year.
per year. What is CPI? The consumer price index. Why is CPI used?
Annually, like hospital.
To give a measure of the cost of living.
Hello.
Who would you like to find?
Daniel Skelton.
He is here. Mr. Parker's here for you. Looks like you're getting something official.
Yes. Thanks, buddy.
He gave you an official one?
Yeah.
He made his red like mine.
It has like the dates on it and stuff. I
Oh.
guess, so.
Okay. Alright. Equation to get the price index. So what do? We take the price times the quantity, right? And we total it up, right? Did I just do that wrong? I did, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You take the year over the base times 100. Okay, this next one, to get the inflation rate, you take year two, can I just put year two like that? Minus year one over what? Year one times 100, and that gives you your rate. Okay, this test is longer than the other one. I think our other one was 40 questions, right? So it's 45. Okay, like the first 2 pages is about like 3 circular flow and unemployment and stuff. Okay, so define nominal interest rate. This is the rate of interest with what in it?
Inflation.
Rate of interest with inflation. The real interest rate, it calculates out inflation, right? And then to get the equation for interest rate is the rate of interest is equal to I minus pi, which I is nominal and this is the real. Okay, we're gonna do our multiple choice. Yeah, go ahead, they've been making you drink a lot of water. Just if they scream at you, scream at us, and we'll go and save you. And those nuts have juice in them. In both cases, most nuts and most nuts have juice in them. Pass it this way. Sarah. Okay. Alright, let's look at what's going on. So we see, it says, where am I? Why can't I find myself? Hey, why did I start with one? I don't know what happened, but there's one there. Y'all see that? It's 9. I don't know what happened. I guess it sent it through the feeder wrong. But let's just start off with 9 because this is where it's stapled. It says, which of the following transaction would represent an addition to the nation's current gross domestic product? Mrs. Smith purchases shares stock in the automobile company. Does that count? No, because that's a financial transaction. A retailer increases the stock of imported shoes. No, because that's taken out. The government increases its domestic purchase of food for use by the military.
No,
Yes.
military.
C plus I plus G plus XN. Does that count?
Yes.
Yes, this is G.
Okay, so it doesn't matter for, okay.
Military doesn't count for unemployment. But I'm talking about GDP here. So
yeah.
I'm thinking about GDP, I'm thinking C plus I plus G plus XN. And so this one doesn't count because that's a financial. This one doesn't count because it's imported, it's foreign. This one counts, it is G. A corporation sells shoes from last year's inventory. Does that count? No. A mother sells her car to her daughter. It's used, there you go. Cheap mom. Okay, let's move on. Bless you. 10. Which of the following is a true according to the circular flow model? Firms are suppliers in both the product and factor markets. Can they supply in both markets? No, that's wrong. Firms are the demanders in the product markets. Wait, don't they sell the products?
Yes.
So that's wrong. Households are the demanders in both product and factor market. That's not correct. Households are the demanders in the product market and suppliers in the factor market. Yes. The unofficial unemployment rate is not accurate indicator of actual unemployment in the economy because structural unemployment is greater than cyclical unemployment at the going wage rate. No. Full employment is greater than the natural unemployment. No. Unemployment rate is less than the natural unemployment. No. The official rate does not include persons who have given up looking for work. Yes, there we go. Okay. 12. As a measure of economic welfare, gross domestic product underestimates a country's production of goods and services when there is an increase in. So, a country's welfare is not measured, it's underestimated when what happens here? There's production of military goods. Does that count towards GDP when there's a production of military goods? When people produce stuff for the military, does that count towards GDP? Does the government buy it? Yes. I'm looking for something that doesn't count. The production of anti-pollution devices. Does that count? Yes. Crime prevention services. Does that count? When people buy stuff for their home to prevent crime, such as that counts. When households do their own production, does that count towards GDP? No. So this is like me making tortillas at home. Do I get to sell that to my family? No. Okay. I promise you, there's a question on the test. It's like Miss Verdine produces tortillas. Does that count towards GDP? No. When my husband mows the lawn, does that count towards GDP? No, but when I pay my neighbor who has a business, does that count towards GDP? Yes. I gave you a lot of questions here. Okay, 13. It says, if purchases of education and medical care were counted as investments rather than consumption, so wait, here's GDP, right? It's C plus I plus G plus XN. If they were counted as investments rather than consumption, so people, are they still having to spend money? Is this group of people still spending that money? Yes, but we're just gonna quantify it as something else, right? So medical care and education are gonna be counted as investment. Is this gonna change that spending? Are they still spending money?
Yes.
Yes. So look at this. Did it not change because there was no change in total expenditures? Did it say that these people were gonna stop buying?
No,
No,
it's just,
they're just changing
Yeah.
it, right?
it's changing the numbers we're adding, but it's not changing the
But
end
is it
number.
still changing this, is it changing the spending at all? No, because are they still spending it?
Yes.
So it's A. Do y'all get that? People get hung up on this one. Cause no matter what, are your parents gonna pay for your education and they're gonna pay for medical care? Yes, right? So is it still consumption? Y'all don't believe me. It's consumption, okay? So that's why it's not changed. Y'all get me? Okay. For the test, that's what y'all need to know. Let's look at 1. A major difference between real and nominal. Oh, I kept on telling you nominal has a what? That tells me about what? Okay. Is that real GDP excludes the government transfer payments? No, it calculates that. Excludes imports? No, it has that in there. Real GDP, is it adjusted for price level changes using a price index?
Yep.
There we go. 2, which of the following statements exemplifies the concept of structural unemployment? New entrants to the labor force have trouble finding jobs. No, that's what? That's frictional, right? Workers leave their current jobs to find better jobs. Frictional. Workers are laid off because of aggregate demand has declined. That's cyclical. Workers are fired because consumers have reduced their total expenditures. That's cyclical. Gosh, this better be it. Workers are fired because their skills are no longer in demand. That's structural. Okay? Let's look at the next one. The unemployment rate measures the percentage of people in the labor force who do not have jobs. Wait, let's keep on reading. People in the labor force who have part-time jobs but are looking for a full-time job. No. People who do not have jobs and have given up looking for work. No, that's our discouraged worker. People in the adult population who do not have jobs.
Because there doesn't seem to be working.
Oh, not all
That's a
people
bit
are
vague.
No, adult, that can be,
You can be 42.
a senior
Okay.
citizen.
Like
Yeah.
Uncle
Okay,
Flim.
Flunjet. Okay, people in the adult population who have temporary jobs. Okay, so A is the answer, because that was the best of them. Which of the following can be considered a leakage from the circular flow in economic activity?
Savings.
There we go, we had that on our review, right? Because when I look at this, C plus I plus G plus XN, right? Which of the following is included in the computation of gross domestic product? Government transfer payments such as unemployment benefits. Does that count? No, that's a transfer payment, right? Purchases of goods such as used cars. Child care tasks performed by house husbands. The husband wants to be a house husband. Okay. Total value of business inventories. No. Additions to business inventories. Yes. Which of the following best explains the transfer payments are not included in the calculation of gross domestic product? Transfer payments are used to pay for intermediate goods? No. Transfer payments are government expenditures and government expenditures are excluded? No, right? Because C plus G plus XN. Recipients of transfer payments have not produced or supplied a good or service in exchange for these payments? True. Right? This next one, it's asking us to do these quantities, for CPI, so I know I need to add these, right? Times that, right? 30, 14, and this is 36, so that gives me 80, right? Anybody checking my math?
Mhm.
Oh, you know
Right.
what, we just did this on the thing and I put it on y'all's work, right? 6 times 5 times 25, right? 18, and this is what?
57.
57, so that gives me 100. Remember, this is the thing where Colton thought it was 130 earlier, remember that? We just had it on our thing, this is why we did the math. So looking at this, it wants us to look at the consumer price index for what happened from 93 to 94. So I take 100 minus 80 over 80 times 100, which gives me what? And I'll have calculators for y'all next time.
25%.
25%. Okay. 8, which of the following would be true if the actual rate of inflation were less than the expected rate? So the actual rate of inflation was less than the expected rate of inflation, which is the nominal, right? Inflation has been underpredicted. No. The real interest rate has exceeded the nominal. No. The real interest rate has been negative. No. People who have borrowed funds at a nominal interest rate during this time period will lose. Yes. Okay. This next one, I took out from the 2010 release test, and it looks a little bit weird. I didn't have time to type it up, but do y'all see these that are circled? These will definitely be something that is GDP. The value of which of the following is counted in the United States gross domestic product? Clean air, child care a father provides for his child, an automobile produced in Sweden by a United States firm, a car produced in the United States sold in Europe, or medical services not provided due to preventative health care. What counts in GDP? The clean air count.
D.
D is correct. Okay.
Wait.
It doesn't matter where it's sold, it just matters on where
Where it was produced, it's produced in a year within the country's boundaries.
Okay.
Okay, let's look at this one. Oh wait, up here, aggregate demand may be measured by adding consumption, investment, savings, and imports.
No.
Savings, oh wait, so no, savings, no. Consumption, investment, government spending, and net exports. Yes, aggregate demand is GDP.
Oh, I was reading B.
Okay. We got one more to do. It says the annual inflation rate is expected to be 5% over the next 3 years. Juan plans to take out a 3-year loan to purchase an automobile. If Juan decides not to take out the loan if the real interest rate exceeds 3%. So he says it's supposed to be 5%, but he says if it exceeds, am I adding or subtracting? Exceeds. Adding plus 3 gives me what?
8%.
He's willing to pay 8%. Okay, do y'all get that one? The ones we've done have been minuses. Okay, I have one more thing to hand out to y'all, which is the binder organization sheet. And I don't even know where it went. It's orange.
Under your press, the open.
Those are red. I just
Under
had,
that. There. No, oh, never mind.
I just had,
Were you at home? I said.
I have to add one paper. This is gonna go in 3, 4,
It's almost
5, 6.
When do you go? 13? Yeah. I think actually.